Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to call the Clackamas Parish Council's Borough Pit Advisory Committee to order March the 12th, 2021 at 9:04 a.m. We'll have the roll call, please.
Just hit yes.
For those new members, you can punch in your attendance on the screen.
Let the record reflect that we have 6 present and John Bartholomew is out. Let's stand for the pledge. Led by Mr. Roussel.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move to item 2.
Election of committee chairman and vice chairman.
All right, we'll open up for the chairman.
Acting Chairman, I'd like to nominate Mr. Carlton LaFrance for chairman.
Second.
There's no need for a second nomination. Yes. Is there any other nomination? Machines are open. And the message passes 6-0.
Congratulations, Mr. Carlton
Thank you.
LaFrance, I guess.
We'll move to item,
I'll nominate Benny Roussel as vice chairman.
we have a motion by Mr. Konovich. He nominated Mr. Roussel as vice chairman. Is there any more nomination? Any more nomination? Machines are open. And the measure passes 6-0. Congratulations, Mr. Roussel.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 3, please.
Update on all borrow pits located within the parish.
Tilzak, would you like to take the lead?
I'll just mention that I'm Jacques Tuzet, and I'll just mention that I sent an email to all committee members with documents that I was given. They include a list of the annual renewals and road use fees that have been paid by the various entities, as well as just a list of the ordinances that we're operating under, as well as some consent judgments that were collected over the years regarding borrow pits.
Is there any questions or comments from the table? Mr. Valet, please, your mic here, sir.
Jacques, as I asked you earlier, is a map of the East and West Bank locating all of the borrow pits that are in existence or with an existing permit, reflecting whether they're in compliance or not compliance at the present time. And second, do we have a schedule of all the pits as to the owners, dates of permits that were issued, and again, whether they're in compliance or not, and in any special terms and conditions that are in there? I think you said there's really nothing in that format yet. Is there some way we can compile that? And who?
Yes, to answer your record on the question, I'm not aware of any map or any spreadsheet that's been created, but, and they're not in my possession, so that answers that question. And I can't answer the second part of that question. I don't know who's in charge of that information.
Benny, what do you think?
Well, I think it's answered that we don't have the information compiled and we don't. I think one of my answer is that's probably the reason why we have this Borough Pit Committee being formed, because there are too many unknowns and too many questions that surface over the time that we are addressing these issues, and we really don't know the answers. And so I view this Borough Pit Committee is to try to organize that effort to be able to answer those type of questions that you just asked.
Well, let me ask you, the information that, Jock, that you prepared, is this all of the borrow pits that are in existence?
I can't answer that question. This is what I was given, that was collected by our secretary at the legal department, and was given to me, and I've shared it with the committee because I thought it'd be a good baseline to start conversations and at least understand where we stand today.
Who in the administration has oversight of the borough pits as to their compliance and their approvals?
Well, according to all the ordinances that I shared with you, starting in 2014, there was I think it begins in 2014 with resolution number 14-123. It's essentially a resolution that directs the government to essentially start an enforcement unit, which includes an engineer, an auditor, and attorney. They're not listed. If you go to 14-177, and ma'am, as a point of order, do I need to hit this request to speak in order to be?
You're live. All the microphones are on.
Okay, thank you. At 14-177, they actually designated Myers Engineers, Erickson, Quintel, and Laporte as the auditing body, and then the law firm was Dwyer, Cambry, and Suffern. I don't know, I didn't see any information or anything of note from those entities. And then there's a litany of other ordinances that essentially, just talk about enforcement, but I don't see that it ever happened. And once again, this is many years ago. 2014 and 2015 seems to be the general thrust of the effort.
Am I at loss like you are as to where we look for this?
Once again, this all happened at a time when I wasn't even a twinkle in this administration's eye.
It's all new to me, too.
It's our first meeting. I'm sure there'll be some growing pains.
Right.
Yeah.
In the paperwork that was sent, I think there, if I'm not mistaken, there was a resolution at some point where the parish president was to appoint a member of the legal department instead of that law firm of Dwyer, Cambry, and Suffern. Do we know if that's ever been done?
I did see that ordinance, sir, and
It's 1566, I'm sorry.
15-66. I do see that. I checked our L drive to see if there was any designation, any movement, any information therein. I don't see it, sir. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Mr. Chairman, from the preliminary discussions that we've had now, it seems that our first order of business probably should be an organizational one to review these ordinances and to make amendments to them at the table of the full body to close these loopholes. For instance, if we are addressing 1566, then we need to get the administration to give us a name so we can appoint that member to take care of that. This was adopted back in 2015, and it hadn't happened. Of course, we've been through 4 or 5 presidents since then, but so I would recommend that we ask the administration to give us a name so we can comply with 1566, and ask the secretary to prepare the ordinance and amend this ordinance. Let's see what else we have. We have ordinance 14-188, simply change the gauge of requirement of the borough pit fences. For whatever reason that was done, but they changed the gauge. I don't see that that's in place. And to me, what happens is when we keep passing individual ordinances, we lose track of what really goes on, because I believe we're under ordinance 12-238 is what we're assuming that is the latest ordinance that we are operating under for permitting of borough pits. And I think that probably 14-188, which came a couple of years later, probably should have amended ordinance number 12-238, so we'd all be talking about one ordinance. It's just my opinion on how this is developed. And then we have another ordinance, 14-177, an ordinance to engage the qualified professional engineers, auditors, and attorneys to enforce the provisions of the 2012 Borough Pit Ordinance, Plaquemines Parish Code of Ordinances, Section 1887 et sec. And I do remember Myers Engineers was hired, and I think as a result of that, his recommendations were, I think some pits were not fenced. So my recollection, anyway. So, having said all of that, that doesn't give us anything to work with until we make those amendments as far as actually moving forward for whether or not the ordinance is what we really want. From the documents that were submitted to all of us, it appears to me that most borrow pits, and Mr. Valley, to answer your question earlier about is this a complete list, it's not a complete list. My recollection is that there are no East Bank pits listed in these documents. I believe that the pits that are provided in these documents, they're all mostly settlement agreements, and what the wording is in here that they have. Mr. Tuzette, you can chime in at any time and give us your opinion on this, but it's my opinion that most of the pits are being operated under settlement agreements or consent agreements, or whatever you want to call them. What's the correct term? Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. I consider, the documents that I gave you, the law of the land. We have the ordinances which set out the basic parameters. Several items ended up in litigation. Those were reduced to consent judgments and agreements between council administration and pit operator owners, and whatever, legal issues were handled and whatever essentially parameters were set forth, that too becomes a subset of the law of the land. So, in my collection efforts, I thought that would be important to look at, what the base law is and what any outliers would be, and they're before this committee now.
Jacques? Yeah, Mr. Rousseau, I guess before we go making amendments to something, I don't know what we're making amendments to until we determine what is the rule and what ordinance we're operating underneath. I don't know what we need to change. I think we need to, and Jacques, I'm with you. I read the settlement agreements, compromise agreements, and all litigation that took place with this stuff and what was dismissed. It really is case-specific. One, we have a general resolution of what was authorized by the council and what the rule is. Then you have modifications to it with various ordinances and resolutions. Then subsequent to that, you have litigation that supersedes that the courts set all the rules. So, one, I think we need a general policy of what we are doing and what we're living by. And then from there, if we want to make any modifications or changes to that, we could discuss that. But then further, each one is specific that may be, the courts may have superseded what the policy is, which I have problems with, but that's neither here nor there. So we need to find out where we are.
At this point, can't we assume that if they're not under some sort of consent judgment, that they would fall under the rule of law of the council ordinance?
I think that's a fair assumption.
All right. I'd also, maybe to help with your permission, Carlton, Chairman, I'd like to distribute something that's a list of known borrow pits in the area, which is significantly more than the 6 that are listed that we got here. I'll pass these down. I don't know that all of these are still active. You need a copy.
I got more.
Oh. I think that's all. Oh, there's more. So if you need more.
Thank you.
Oh, well, maybe they're different.
Cole, my cousin, you think you could have got it really big?
Hey, man.
Got a little first meeting. Send that blank paper, you got a little first meeting.
I don't know if I have enough.
While we're passing that out, Mr. Valet,
Wait, hold on, Benny. Okay.
to address your comments, my recommendation to make amendments is because at this point, we really don't have a compliance with the attorney or the legal staff that's appointed by the ordinance to this committee or to these tasks that are listed in the ordinance. So that's what I was referring to about making some amendments. I know Mr. Trezett is here, so he's been directed by the parish attorney to come here, but it doesn't fulfill the requirement of the ordinance of 1566, where an ordinance authorizing the parish president to sign a member of the legal department to assume the role of project manager previously given to the law firm of Dwyer, Cambry, and Suffren. So I see that as being a preliminary decision that needs to be made so that we're operating with an appointed attorney. Now, Mr. Trezett may not like that appointment, and he may not be the one that's going to be appointed. But at the same time, we need an attorney on board to comply with 1566. So that was my first suggestion, and that's why I said.
I misunderstood where you were going, but I can support that.
Well, thank you for that, but I wanted to be clear, that's, before we can run, we got to walk. Tell Danny to take his dogs outside.
And Mr. Roussel, you mentioned earlier about the task force or the enforcement unit, or maybe Mr. Tozat did.
Who's that?
So he doesn't, Myers Engineering, for what I understand, is no longer doing the enforcement part from the engineering perspective. We don't have the legal, or the legal appointee from the parish president yet. And the third leg of that would be the auditing part of the borrow pits. It was my understanding that the parish over the years have paid a god-awful amount of money to someone named Gary Lambert Gary Lambert Company out of Houston, Texas, to do audits on the borrow pits.
Well, my recollection is that we do not pay, we pay Mr. Lambert by the money that he recoups. And, he's an external auditor, but his name is not listed in the ordinance number 14177. Erickson, Quintel, and Laporte, and I'm not sure what they have done in the past to comply with ordinance 14177.
And that brings me to where I was going with that. Although I see charges for audits over the years for the borrow pits, all I've been able to get as far as public records request is a partial report, a very partial report to only one audit. Yet there were audits done, quite a few, we were billed for numerous audits from the records I'm seeing. And I think a good starting point would be to get copies if we have to, whether it be by public records request or subpoena or by whatever action we need to do, to get a copy of those full audits of the borrow pits, which instead of, like you said, recreating the wheel, we may know where we can direct our efforts to better address the issues we may have.
So, Ms. Toops, you're writing down a list of to-do items, I guess, as a result of this conversation?
I'm sure Barb took over when I was.
Okay, so if we are agreeing that, I'm hoping we're agreeing that we need to move forward with amending the ordinance to get us legal counsel appointed by the administration, and that would be amending 1566. The second request, I think, from Mr. Wilcox is that we request the documentations from, I guess, Myers Engineering and Erickson and Quintal for any documents that they have to gather and to create a record of history.
Correct.
Mr. Trezett, you have anything to help and share with this? Or I know it seems to me that you're here, and I'm not sure you really want to be here. But
No, it's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Roussel. I'll clarify what I consider my role at this point. I'm not sure who nominated me, but I'm thrilled to be a part of any effort that helps this parish and clarifies any issues that may be arising in the future are present now. I'd just like to clarify what I think my position is, and I don't come here, once again, as the designated attorney for PPG. You bring up an excellent point. We haven't gotten there yet. I consider myself here because I'm a resident of the East Bank, and I can bring some common sense and help with maybe solving some of these mysteries. Until that role changes, that's the role I'm going to kind of stick to. And, my default is to look to the law and legal issues and legal documents. That's because it comes naturally to me. But I don't consider myself, once again, the attorney for this body, but I am happy to help.
It's my recollection that you're here because the parish attorney asked you to come or sent you.
Once again, the first I heard of it was the newspaper called me and asked me what I thought about my position on the Borough Pit Committee.
Well, your boss needs to talk to you. I will welcome to
Thank
the
you.
Borough Pit Committee.
Thank you,
But so anyway, that's the point that I'm trying to clear up right now and to make sure that we're heading in a direction that complies with what's on the books. And if, there's been some suggestions that the Internal Audit Department look at some of these issues. And I'm not sure where that comes from, but it's been raised to me in casual conversation with members of the administration. So I guess it's important to know where Erickson, Crentel, and Laporte have been. And if this body wants to move in a direction of doing that, perhaps we can pass a resolution and be our third resolution requesting that information from the administration and asking them to provide this person for the legal counsel and the two requests that we have for Myers Engineering documents and auditing documents to make it an informal request so that we're not coming here at our next meeting asking for documents. So if it's appropriate, I'd like to see if we could get a motion to ask the administration to comply with ordinance number 1566 and requesting the documents in their possession for ordinance number 14177.
That's a motion by you, Mr. Russo?
Yes, I'll make that
Do we
motion.
have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Konovich. Any discussion from the table? From the audience? Machines are open. And the measure passes 5-4, 1 abstention.
Mr. Russo?
Something else we might consider is getting with the sheriff's department as far as occupational license for borrow pits. That may be a good source of information of what pits, and we can compare that to the list to see how many pits we do have and how many have occupational license. I'm sure they all have an occupational license.
According to the list you just gave us, 3 of them.
So that might be a good, another source of information.
You want to put that in the motion of a resolution asking the council secretary to send a letter to the sheriff's office seeking occupational licenses for the current borough pit operators in Plaquemines Parish?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wilcox, seconded by Mr. Konovich. Any discussion from the table? Audience? Machines are open. And the measure passes 6-0.
Mr. Wilcox, the list that you gave us just now passed out, how did you compile this?
That list is somewhat dated. If you look, I think the latest year on it is 2017. Back a number of years ago, when there was a what I understood to be a former borough pit committee, we had done some public records request, trying to accumulate some of this information ourselves, just out of being concerned citizens. And through public records request, we put together a spreadsheet. Like I said, some of these, in fact, some of them are listed even back in 2017 were already closed. This is in no means, Mr. Valley, any type of definitive list, but it is of known borrow pits at one time. And I thought that might be a good start, at least to
I
have
think
an
it's
idea.
critical that we identify all the borrow pits that are in the parish, active or inactive, or what status they're all in,
Absolutely,
and then determine which ordinances govern.
absolutely.
And then specifically from there, what litigation or settlements supersede those ordinances and what terms we're living with and are subject to for the pits.
I agree, totally. And the next step, I think, would be to make sure that they're all, once we do have that foundation, we can then work on whether they're all properly permitted, properly licensed, paying their taxes, et cetera.
Yeah, I have 4 or 5 ordinances and resolutions that were furnished to us that leave it open as to which one rules and what rules are we living by. And then frankly, what rules are the pit operators living by in governing? And then going into the different litigations or settlements that I've looked in here, which is onerous. Who's in charge?
Well, Mr. Valley, I totally agree with you. And I think regardless of what rules they're under, they all have to abide by certain rules as far as licensing, permitting, and paying taxes. So I do agree that we do need to get the full list. I do fully agree that we need to know what law they're under or what ordinance they're under. And once we get to that point, I think we'll have a good foundation again to make sure that they're all in compliance.
It could take some time pulling that together.
Definitely.
All right, Mr. Valley, what you are asking for is a current list of the borrow pits that is operating now?
All borrow pits within the parish.
All borrow pits. That's a form of a motion?
I'll make it that. Operative or inoperative.
We have a motion that we get a list of all the borrow pits that are operating or non-operating in the parish of Plaquemines. Do I have a second?
Well, before we pass that motion, that request is to the permit department? I mean, we got to know who to ask that for.
Well, that's a good point because they may not all be permitted, Benny, and that's part of the problem.
So we're on the track for legal advice, we're on the track for auditing and occupational licenses. So we probably should have included that in the motion for occupational license, but we can have a separate motion asking the permit department to provide all permitted and closed pits.
And it wouldn't be appropriate to ask all of the agencies within the parish, including FEMA, who's buying the dirt, or whoever's using the dirt, to give us a list of who's doing what where now?
That would be the Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, thank you.
I think that we're operating on the local ordinance number 12238, even though that most of the pits that are currently in operation are operating on their own legal settlements. And as I said in the opening comments, that's probably why we're here today, is to find out where we are, because there are so many separate settlements and agreements that are being individually operated under, where some people are granted they can do certain things and others are complying with 238 plus their individual settlement agreements. When you get into the core, I don't know what that'll get us. I think that'll be something that we can explore down the line when we start doing more in-depth analysis of what's going on in individual pits. For instance, if we explore the sales tax issue, the Corps could probably provide information as to how much dirt was sold out of a pit I mean, that type of thing. It's just me talking out loud, thinking of what you're asking for, but I think we need a baseline, and I don't know that the Corps would have the baseline about who's permitted through our permit department, because some pits may not be providing dirt to the Corps, and they may be permitted, and so we would miss those. So back to the baseline we're trying to establish today in this organizational meeting is to, get a base from which to work from, which would be our permit department.
My intent of the motion was only to identify all the pits, operative and inoperative, in the parish, and to develop that source from whatever source we need to go to find out that.
Well,
And y'all got to tell me that, because I'm not, you've been in the.
my understanding is that since we are, permitting these pits, then we would use our baseline, And if the Corps is buying dirt from somebody that's not permitted, which I highly doubt, then that would be a separate issue that we could find out maybe by asking the Corps. But, I mean, I don't think that the Corps would be buying dirt from an unpermitted pit. So the baseline that I think we need to, in our authority, look, this is a situation for me. We don't have a lot of time to do this. If you start dealing with the Corps and FOIA requests, it would take years to get information out of the Corps. So we need to operate, in my opinion, from the basis of our local authority and the ordinances that we permit from. Now, I don't have a problem. You can send the Corps a letter, or you want to put it in a resolution. And, I think it needs to be specifically worded to be able to say what you're requesting from the Corps, as compared to our permit department, where we want to know all permitted pits, open or closed. And that way, we know what we're dealing with on our level. But, it's open for discussion. Mr. Suzette, you have any comments?
No, sir. Thank you for the offer.
You don't need to conclude the Corps in that, then. I was just trying to look for
Yeah.
sources of where we could find out who might be doing what, where, and how in the parish.
Well, I would hope
I
that
agree
they,
with you, it's going to take forever to get a FOIA letter with them.
I believe that the permit department should have that set of data.
What we do have from the Corps through public records request in the past is a list of projects. From lot receipt to this area, each phase, how much those contracts are, what contractors are assigned to those projects. But what I don't have from the Corps is the
That doesn't necessarily mean that all the dirt that's dug down here goes to Corps projects.
that's correct. And still another issue is that all the dirt dug down here, it doesn't all go in the parish either. So that's another issue we can address at a later date.
Right, those are all issues that may be developed later. And again, these court decisions and these settlement agreements have really led to a hodgepodge operation of borough pits, in my opinion. So anyway, I think someone was offering a motion for permit department, to request a permit department?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, to see all, the current list of all the borough pits that is being operating and non-operating in the parish at this moment.
Yes, sir.
Second.
That's fine.
We have a second, we have a motion by Mr. Valley, seconded by Mr. Conovich. Any discussion? From the table, from the audience? Please state your name and address, sir.
Hi, David Clark, 108 Avenue A in Belchase. I know we have parish workers that drive up and down the road. When we were doing the RV parks, they were identifying the RV parks just by driving up and down the road. I go to Venice every day, and I follow the dump trucks. So you can just about drive by and see where the borough pits are. So, we go to the parish for that, but apparently we're not sure if the parish knows what we have or not. I assume we do, but maybe they're not all licensed to operate. So that's another avenue we can take is, let's get with those inspectors for the parish and see who's operating. No.
Yeah, but not all borrow pits can be visualized through the highway.
That's right. You're correct. But you can follow the dump trucks. Now, I see them
Yeah, but
up and down the roads.
some borrow pits are not being operated, but that's still a borrow pit.
Right. Right. I grew up in Venice, and when I was a kid, there was a borrow pit right across the street from me, and it's still there, and there's still a hole, and it's still full of water. So we've got those. We've got them in Narren. We've got them up and down the highways. That I know they're supposed to have been refilled. You know, you've always heard that, and they never complied, or they never went back and filled these holes. So
Believe it or not, every borrow pit that we have in this parish doesn't fall underneath the same regulations.
right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, you're correct.
That was no standardized permitting or regulations set for borrow pits.
Right. Yeah, you know, we've been talking about this for many years, trying to see what our set some type of conditions on these borrow pits. Seems like we can never get there. Don't know what authority this committee is going to have. I imagine it's just a recommendation, right? That goes to the council and it votes, and the way our council's divided, probably would never achieve anything with that either. But, you know, I'm watching a few interested people that want to try to accomplish something with this, and I see others that look like they're trying to divert any type of direction to get something done. So hopefully, if this is a true committee and we really want to get things done, that we work together for the good of the parish and try to get what's owed to us, whether it's through taxes, occupational license, or just even identify and hold them to their responsibilities and make sure they comply with the laws and the ordinances that's in place. So hopefully, I'm not sure, are you getting paid to be here, or are you just here as everybody here, I assume, is just here on their own time?
We're all volunteering our time.
Okay. So good. That means you've got some interest here, and you want to be here, and you want to make sure that the parish is.
Clark, let me be clear. He is an assistant parish attorney, but he has acknowledged that he is not here representing the government.
Right. And that's what I heard. You're right.
But, you know, to think that he's not an assistant parish attorney on the parish payroll is not accurate. He is.
Okay. And that's what I want to make sure.
Wait, let me finish. And under the contract and the ordinances that they were hired under, they are required to work full-time.
Okay.
So, you know, that was a dispute early on. We settled it, and they signed affidavits saying that they put in the hours that they're supposed to put in.
Okay.
So whether he's, you know, taking some type of other time, you know, I don't know, and we don't really look at that very closely because we take their affidavits for their word.
Okay.
And they have a judicial responsibility not to sign affidavits that are not accurate.
Right.
And that's on them if they do that. But so I want you to understand that what you said is completely accurate of whether we have cooperation from the administration or not. I'm not sure who they're going to assign to this out of the legal department, if they're going to assign anybody. And the success of this committee is directly reflective upon the cooperation that we receive from the administration. And if the administration has no interest going down this path, then this committee will not be very successful.
Right.
But at the same time, at the table, as you know, the political divide around here will be reflected in the votes.
That's right.
And so you're pretty accurate with that.
Oh, yeah.
And I appreciate your comments and coming today. So we will see where we go from here. Now, you know, depends if the administration wants to cooperate. That's what it boils down to.
Right. And I agree with that. Now, hopefully you hear on good terms, everybody, to let's get this corrected and get it fixed and do something. So I know it's a work day, like you were saying. So if you're being paid for today, that's probably not the committee you want to be on. So just want to throw that out there, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a dirty job, but somebody got to do it.
That's right.
All right.
Okay, where we at?
I have a question, Mr. Rizzo. Why wouldn't the administration want to cooperate and go forward and work on this? Because when I look at these agreements, the permitting aspect of it is an obligation of the administration to do this. There's restrictions in the ordinances that you put in there that have certain requirements there. And further, it produces revenue for this parish, both ongoing as far as how much dirt is there, the fees that goes through, the road service fees, et cetera. It would seem to me that they'd want to get straight with this and collect and make sure the accounting is correct. I mean, why wouldn't they, I guess?
Mr. Valley, that's a question that I can't answer for the administration. They'll have to answer for themselves, and the answer that they give will be in their actions. But as we started this meeting with 1566, back to the legal counsel and the manager for this project has not been appointed since this ordinance has been adopted almost 7 years ago. So we've been through 4 or 5 presidents. None of them have, stepped up and done that at this point. And if they have, the attorneys that were appointed are no longer here, because obviously the ones that we have left, none of them are listed as what it says here, role of project manager, legal department. So it's clearly on the books that the legal department is to assume the role of project manager, previously given to the law firm that worked on ordinance number 12238. Now, 12238, again, has been replaced for many of the operators by the court consent decrees and all of that we're operating under. And again, that leads to the confusion about where we're at, who does what, who follows what rules. And I don't know what the administration will do and can't answer for them.
It would seem to me, and just sitting in the audience from time to time, that this would fall underneath the supervision of Mr. Epley and his operations. But again, I can't speak to that. Maybe we can invite him next
Well,
time.
but Mr. Ballet, you failed to read the ordinance. Look, it says, an ordinance authorizing the parish president to assign a member of the legal department to assume the role of project manager, previously given to the law firm. So Mr. Epley, has no role in this at this point until this ordinance is amended or the parish president's office assigns him to work underneath whoever he assigns in the legal department to assume the role of project manager, as long as this ordinance is on the books. So, I'm one that follows the rules as they're written, whether I like them or not. And so, at this point, that's where we're at. So we need a lawyer appointed, or we need this rescinded, or we need a new ordinance appointing someone else if it's Mr. Epley or whatever. But at this point, I'm following what's on the books.
So your original amendment would apply and be applicable to that?
Well, my original resolution was to ask the administration to appoint somebody from the legal department to comply with ordinance 1566. And if the administration fails to do that, then we'll know the cooperation is not there, and we will have to regroup and go another direction. But that's about all I can tell you at this point.
I understand. That's good.
I don't know what else that I have to offer. I think that for an organizational meeting, I think that, we're up to some requests, trying to build a database as to where we start from. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if there's any other interest to do anything today.
Well, he did make a resolution to get all the
Permits?
a list of all the operational borrow pits that we have currently.
Yeah,
And,
all permitted pits, operating and non-operating?
right,
And do we vote on that yet?
no.
No, not yet.
Okay, well, I guess we got to move forward on that.
So we had a motion by Mr. Valet and seconded by Mr. Konovich to get a list of all the borrow pits in the parish, operational and non-operational,
Yes, sir.
From the permit office.
from the permit office. Anything else you wanted to amend it, Mr. Roussel? Anything you want to include in that?
No, I think that along with the cover letters that go with these resolutions, that we put a timeline in those letters, that we need these within 5 days, which is well past the public records request. Even though we're a public body, we shouldn't have to wait. But, there may be excuses about workload and those type of things that you normally hear when you ask for public records.
Right.
So,
Any more discussion from the table? From the audience? Machines are open. And the measure passes 5-4, 1 abstention. Next item, please.
Discussion of ordinances regulating borrow pits.
I think we just did that.
I think we've exhausted it for today.
Currently I have a ordinance on the agenda for the council. Putting a moratorium on the borrow pits for 1 year, but until we get all the information that we asked for, I think that I'll just defer that to the next committee meeting.
Well, I think it's imperative that we get these responses as soon as possible so we can have a next meeting and come to some decisions, or some recommendations at least.
And I know Woodland Borough Pit also, they have a renewal permit too also that I've been deferring. So as soon as we can get that information, this committee can make a recommendation to the council and we'll go with it there.
All right.
Next item, please.
Status of borrow pit legislation and the regulations or ordinances under which each pit is operating under at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I think we've discussed that
I think we discussed that
pretty much as well. And again, I would encourage all the members to read ordinance number 12-238 in its entirety and have a good knowledge of it, because I think that's where we start, even though the consent decrees or the consent agreements or whatever, settlement agreements are regulating some of these pits. This is what anybody would come in and have to comply with today if it's not covered by one of these settlement agreements. And when we get to the settlement agreements and renewals, I guess those are legal questions that we're waiting on an attorney to be assigned to be able to ask those legal questions.
Mr. Valley?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's proper, but I'd like to ask Woodland Borough Pit a couple of questions if we can.
Well, I asked if they have anything.
If you're willing to discuss it. I guess my question is which ordinance and if any court actions are you operating your pits under now? What do you feel you're being governed by?
We are being governed by
Please
the
introduce your name and your.
Paul Hogan, 222 Down the Bayou Road, the Zions, here representing Woodland Bar Pits. All bar pits are operating under your bar pit ordinance. And any other settlement agreements or whatever that amends any portion of the ordinance. So the Bible is the ordinance. And then anything may be changed, under that.
Which one?
It depends. Like on ours, when we submitted our borrow pit application to the parish, we took the borrow pit ordinance and we made changes in it that represents exactly what it is that we're operating under the settlement agreements. I provided that to Mr. Tuesday. I don't know if he provided that to all of y'all, but it's in the package that was submitted to the permit department for our application that's in front of the council right now that was deferred. So it lays it out exactly what we're operating under.
It's really not the subject of the matter here today. Why you have a settlement agreement? Why couldn't you comply with the original ordinance?
Because the settlement agreement only amends certain parts of the ordinance. It doesn't wipe the ordinance out and say you operate under these rules. We operate under your rules of the bar pit ordinance with any amendments to any portion of the ordinance. It doesn't wipe it out.
Why'd you need a court agreement to have to get into that and not in negotiations with the parish?
Well, with the Woodland Bar Pits, we had submitted for an application back in 2014 for that particular pit. The council denied our application for that bar pit. There was no justifiable reason for that, so then we went to court. And then the court and the parish through settlement agreement said, well, look, we're going to go ahead and issue you a permit, but these are the things that we're going to amend. So all the changes were based upon things that the council wanted amended, which we are operating under.
And who did you enter into that agreement with? Who was negotiating on behalf of the parish?
Parish attorney, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't involved with that, but whoever was representing them in the courts and whoever was representing Woodland Bar Pits came up with a settlement agreement. It went in front of the council passed it, and that's what we're operating under.
Right, and the point is that they had their settlement agreement that they're operating under. You have other pits that have their settlement agreements that they're operating under, and you have other people that are operating under right now in court cases. So, there's not been a really cooperative and friendly working relationship developed over the years. In fact, we're in litigation now with these pit operators as we speak, which we really don't want to talk about because it's pending litigation. But this doesn't seem to end with the litigation. And I guess that's what prompted us to see what's wrong with our ordinance. Why is our ordinance always being challenged, always going to court? And, that's...
Well, how often do you have to get your permit renewed?
The permits, once they're issued for a 5-year period, and after that, you can request a 1-2-year extension. So like with the North Pit that's in front of the council right now, that was done, the original permit was issued in July of 2014, and then we ended up getting a 2-year extension, which ends up in July of this upcoming year. So with that, we submitted for a new permit application, because once that 2-year expires, you have to get a completely new permit. So that's what we did. We applied to the to the permit department to get that construction permit. And, that particular bar pit, it's providing dirt to 3 of y'all parish levy projects, to Corps of Engineer projects to protect the parish. It is imperative that that bar pit permit be renewed, be issued in order to provide protection not to the parish and to its residents. Our bar pit is operating in complete compliance with with the bar pit ordinance and any amendments to it made by settlement agreements. What we want to know is, when can we expect to have that permit approved? Anything that y'all need to be provided by us to show y'all that we are in complete compliance. We're up to date on the payment of taxes, road fees, everything. Our fence is completely up. Our signs are up. Everything that's a requirement of the bar pit ordinance, we operate under. We are probably one of the few bar pits out there that do everything by the book, because we can't take the chance of y'all coming out there and shutting us down. It's too important to the projects and to the customers and to the people that we build these levees.
Oh, are you the operator or the owner of the pit?
No, I'm just an engineer that works for Fieldway Construction Company, but I also work on behalf and represent Woodland Bar Pits when need be. The owner of Fieldway is half owner in Woodland Bar Pits.
Who owns Woodland Bar Pits?
Phyllis Adams and Terry White.
Okay. How long do you think that settlement agreement gave you a permit for? When does that expire?
The settlement agreement didn't change your ordinance. Your ordinance provides for a 5-year permit with a 2-year extension. Settlement agreement doesn't change that.
Has that expired? How much time left under that?
That expires in July of this year at the Woodland North Borough Pit. So that's why time is of the essence for this committee to take whatever action it needs in order to be able to approve the construction permit for that Woodland North Borough
My
Pit.
questions are not talked about the merits of your extension of your permits, but what if the council decides not to issue you a new permit? What happens?
I don't know. That would be discussions that the management would have to come up with. I don't know how to answer that, but all I know is it is imperative for y'all, for the safety of this parish, for these core projects that are using the dirt from this pit, to have that permit.
Well, you're not the only pit, and you're not the only certified dirt that's available within the parish. I appreciate. I mean, I'm looking at a list of 30 people on the head pits at one time. So
Right, but there are contracts out there that obligates to that, for that dirt.
I look at economic terms, and when I used to finance dirt contractors, and how long is the life of your pit, and the initial investment and return on investment in there. Obviously, when you all looked at this thing, you looked at the permits were only good for so much time. It wasn't a grandfather thing, you'd have a permit for 30 years. So I'm trying to understand the rationale sitting on this committee.
Yeah,
Am I going off?
unless there was something, there is nothing that we see that would warrant our construction permit being denied. That's why we enter into contracts with providing dirt, even though we know that the permit may be ending, because there's nothing out there to stop and warrants a permit not to be reissued, just like it happened with the South Pit. The council renewed the South Pit permit a year ago. So this is no different than what was done a year ago. The council had no issues with it. There was no problems. There's no complaints, as with the North Pit. We have no complaints. The public is not complaining. There are no issues. Taxes are paid. We got our occupation license. So when we went to the council for this North Borough Pit, we're going there under the belief that this is going to be no problem because there are no issues. It's no different than was done with the South Pit.
Your books get audited by anybody?
When the parish wishes to, we have been audited by the parish, previously. But they do that as they feel a need to it. But we are, like I said, we're up to date with all the taxes, all of that, submitted to the permit department. Valerie is generally the one that keeps track of all of that stuff.
Do you pay, besides a road fee, do you pay on a yard fee to the parish?
It's however it's required in the ordinance. I really don't get into that.
I know that.
That's all done internally in our office, but whatever is, we're obligated to do by the ordinance is what we're doing. We're in complete compliance with your
Could I
ordinance.
get your name again, sir? I'm sorry.
Paul Hogan.
Paul, quick question. I'm looking at the settlement agreement. Do you know where you guys are with the amount of excavation you've done out of the North Pit?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I mean,
Well, I'm looking at an agreement that says you're limited to 17.9 million cubic yards of dirt.
correct.
And you've been digging for quite a while.
Well,
So I'm just asking a general question is, how do we know you haven't exceeded that at this point?
When we first applied, our permit application provided for the pit to be 45 million cubic yards. The residents in the area said, this is a super pit. We do not want a super pit. So what we did, we went back and we amended our permit to provide for the excavation of 17 million cubic yards off of the property. How much has been done to date? I can guarantee you it's nowhere near 17 million. It's not 10 million. It's not 5 million. It's not 3 million. So we're nowhere near that 17 million. It's a huge, piece of property that can be excavated, but it's nowhere near what was agreed to by settlement.
Thank you, sir. I'm just reading through the agreement as we were speaking.
Paul, I appreciate your candidness in asking the question. I was just trying to educate myself as to
Sure.
where all this is. It's new to me. And I don't think we're sitting here trying to judge the merits of your permits or extensions and the compliance on your agreement at the point. And I appreciate the candidness, what you did.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're here to do and help y'all get whatever y'all need in order to be able to move forward with this, because time is of the essence. And anything you'll need provided, anything you'll need explained, we are there for you. Phyllis is there for y'all. If there's ever any problems, any issues that arises with any of these pits, contact me, contact Phyllis, and I can guarantee you it will be immediately addressed. Our intent is to completely comply with y'all.
Excuse me, Paul. What you heard from Mr. Roussel was that all these agreements, they got to be renegotiated over and over and over. I think what he's looking for and suggests consistency and any corrections and modifications to the existing ordinances that clears it up and it truly serves the parish and the borough pit operators. I mean, no one's looking to go on any witch hunts. It's confusing. And as you've already stated, different pits operate on different regulations. It needs to be consistency.
Yeah, well, what we're operating under right now is, like I said, the current borough pit ordinance and any settlement agreements.
And let me ask Mr. Hogan, this renewal of this permit will be a renewal subject to the settlement agreements as well?
No, it's not a renewal. It is a new permit.
A new permit, so it will not be subject to the settlement agreement.
I don't know.
Well, that's very important for us to know that if this is a new permit, then we will just be looking at ordinance number 12-238
Or whatever orders you have on the books at the time.
and not some settlement agreement for other pits. And so I think that if the permit is issued, it'll be issued conditioned upon ordinance number 12-238 as amended, if it's amended, and the settlement agreement will not apply.
It's something maybe that law.
You know, what the settlement agreement did, it restricted the pit to 17.9 million cubic yards. It agreed that we would not establish a landfill in the pit once it was excavated, and that we would not seek borrow pit permits on any of our other property in the area, like north of Myrtle Grove, by Lake Hermitage, that we would not develop any pits in those areas, which we have no plans and we're not going to do. The only two pits we have is the South Pit, which is in West Point of Lahash, and the Woodland Pit, which is across from Ironton.
So maybe we want to make that permit conditioned upon those same requirements. Maybe we don't want to change the settlement agreement.
That's right. I mean,
But the
that's your
question
call.
is, does it apply or doesn't apply? So we will know whether or not we want to do that.
Well, I can guarantee you, we will agree to the settlement agreement if y'all want us to abide by what was in that settlement agreement. We will agree to that as part of the condition of our permit
You
approval.
own property north, you say Myrtle Grove, you own property north of Myrtle Grove besides the way you're trying to permit this pit?
Yes, right, adjacent, immediately on the other side of Myrtle Grove.
Is that where you're trying to put the pit?
No, we have the pit on the south, I'm sorry, on the south side of Myrtle Grove is where we have vacant land that we have no intent of making a pit. This pit is on the north side of Myrtle Grove.
Right, and what's the purpose of the property on the south? You don't have any idea?
No purpose. Yeah.
And Mr. Hogan, there's some stipulations in here that, has this now become a sand pit? Is that,
No, Woodland Bar Pit also has a sand pit, which is totally separate. It's across the highway from the South Bar Pit in West Point of Lahash.
distinguished between north and south on here, but, okay.
Yeah.
And, but all this dirt that you would be pulling out of there would be used, it says marketed and sold only in connection with levy projects in Clackamas Parish. Is that correct?
That's all it's being used for now, and we have no intent of using it for any other purpose at this time. You know, now if you go, there's a second settlement agreement.
Ordinance.
There was a second settlement agreement which came as a result of a settlement agreement that happened between Midway Cattle Ranch, Myrtle Grove Borrow Pit, and the parish, which allowed Myrtle Grove Borrow Pit to do some things that the ordinance had originally not allowed. So what Woodland Borrow Pit did is agree with a settlement with the parish that those things that Myrtle Grove was allowed to do, we would be allowed to do to make the playing field fair. So that's the other part of the
So y'all
settlement agreement.
renegotiated a settlement agreement on that with the parish administration?
I'm not sure.
No, I remember the Midway cattle case, which allowed them, they were selling dirt out of the parish. To
Correct.
avoid the backfill, they settled
In
the
the
case.
backfield, correct.
So I'm curious in your new comments about Woodland enter into an agreement with the parish to give them the same as Midway cattle
There
that
was a-
they do?
There was a settlement agreement that
No, but
whatever,
was there a court action on that?
I don't know. All I know is there was a settlement agreement in my records. But the settlement agreement was to provide the same accommodations that was made to Myrtle Grove, provide to the Woodland Bar Pits.
Do you know how that came about?
No, I don't. Like I said, it's just in my files.
Can you,
It's attached in these documents here, the Midway cattle case, that makes mention of it.
Or would you just,
no, but this is what Woodland Borough Pit.
my education, would you furnish all the terms and conditions that you're operating underneath, whether it be settlement agreements or compliance aspects?
As I stated, that's already been provided to you. It's in the permit application that was submitted to the planning department.
Okay, well, we've asked for that.
And members of the committee, if you look at the consent judgments I sent around, you can see in all consent judgments, any kind of agreement like this, the case is listed in the first paragraph, so you can see the different actions. One that's instructive would be the Midway, what I call Midway 2. That was a state court action, I'm sorry, that was a federal court action, and Midway 1 was a state court action. And those are all attached for y'all to review. So the cases are clearly listed within those documents.
I'm trying to find what he is alluding to, that the parish entered into an agreement with Woodland that gave them the same rights as Myrtle Grove or Midway Cattle, because I don't remember a case being existing at the time with Woodland Borough Pit anywhere along the line. So I'm trying to find out, was that an administrative action that the administration took for some demand that we didn't know about? Because I didn't know anything about the agreement that gave, I knew it was unfair to let Midway Cattle do what they were doing, but I didn't know that the parish had entered into some agreement to allow Woodland to have the same rights as, not saying that it's unfair to do that, but I'm not aware of that.
I say all I know is I have it in my records, but I'm sure y'all have it in y'all records in the parish.
Mr. Hogan, the point is, we don't have all of the records. We don't even have a list of all the borough pits.
Yeah.
And I think that's the purpose of this committee, is to try to get a grasp and handle on exactly what's going on out there in the borough pit world.
Yeah, well, with respect to our pits, y'all have it all, because we have provided it to y'all. So everything that, pertains to our pits, like I said, y'all have it. We're not holding back on anything. We're giving y'all everything that we have, because it is of extreme importance that y'all have it and that we move forward,
Provide our secretary with that document, that settlement agreement that gives you the same rights as Midway Cattle?
Yeah, like, it's in the package that was submitted to the planning department.
And we'll get it from them?
Yeah.
If they have that?
And I'll resend it to the secretary just in case.
And
I'll send that.
Is that Ms. Val LeBlanc? Or who's dealing with your permit? Amitra?
I don't know, we submitted, I think MRSA may have actually accepted the application, but it ultimately goes to Val. And then Val then, passes it out to all the various departments to make sure that everybody's okay with it before it's brought to the council.
Oh, okay. We got plenty of homework here.
Chuck, got a quick, Mr. Zett,
Yes, sir?
I'm looking at these settlement agreements. Mr. Rathborn was involved in these things?
That's correct. I see Ken Rathburn on most of the documents that involve these matters.
And what was his role with the parish?
He's part of that firm that was listed in ordinance number, I believe he's a partner at.
Didn't he represent the port?
He does now.
I think he was the council attorney at that
He was a member
time.
of Dwyer, Cambria, and Suffern, to my knowledge. I think if you look at the signature block, it
Yeah,
says Ken
I know
Rathburn.
what firm he's a member of, but I was curious as to how he got involved.
He was on contract as a council attorney.
Contract to attorney.
Okay. So he did most of the negotiations then?
That's correct. And Mr. Hogan, once again, just to educate the committee, I was trying to compile something for us to discuss today, and I submitted that to these nice ladies here, and but your email, when you contacted me and said you had a borrow pit issue, I said just send whatever documents you've provided to the permits department, and there was a second email that I sent. I'm not sure if it got lost along the way or if it went out, but I did attempt to forward your documents, and if you want to resend them, or I'll resend them again, but I believe everybody has. It was the documents with the red type at the top. Y'all may have seen them. It was a secondary email.
Did all of y'all see that document that had the red writing up top and some blue in it? Because that's the bar pit ordinance with the settlement agreements and everything that, affects the bar pit ordinance pertaining to woodland bar pits included in it.
I don't have it.
And I
You got it? No. Okay, we'll have to get that.
No, once again, that was just a timing issue. I mean, literally, I clicked go on the first email to get these members.
Yeah,
At
and
least basic.
I'll resend it to the council secretary, that way she can make sure that it gets to all y'all.
Jacques? Is that,
Excuse me,
shoot.
can I try to clarify something? The second email that we got was this.
Okay.
No attachment.
That was the attachment.
That's it on the second
Okay.
email.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that your email gets circulated, sir. And once again, it was just a timing issue, and I know this meeting kind of maybe caught you by surprise as well, but we're going to get this sent to everybody and have that for review.
Yeah, so like I said, our main concern is just getting our borrow pit application approved. Anything that can be done on our behalf to help expedite that, would be appreciated. Any, timeliness of these meetings in order to get this thing rolling, as, Mr. Roussel said, we don't want to wait on this. We would appreciate that.
Mr. Hogan, before you go, you just mentioned that this permit that you're attempting to acquire extension is just on Woodland North, correct?
Yeah, it's not extension, it's a brand-new
A
permit
new permit on
on the North Pit.
Woodland North.
We recently got a brand-new permit on the South Pit, like I said, about a year ago.
Just to give you an example, and to reiterate what Mr. Roussel's talking about, I'm looking at two different settlements on two different pits just for you, just for your company. There's one settlement agreement that affects the north. There's one settlement agreement that affects apparently Idlewild, Narren, et cetera. Okay?
Yes.
So even with just one company, we have an ordinance and we have two separate settlement agreements.
Correct, but they are defined. I mean, it's written and it's known exactly
Well,
what
they are,
applies
sir,
to
but-
each.
But what you can understand what we're trying to achieve is some sort of consistency here, or it's quite cumbersome to have to go through and say, we got the ordinance, here's this amendment, now it's been amended by this, now this.
Yeah.
What are we dealing with here?
Yeah,
Okay?
so with respect to the South Pit, if you go back into your records that was submitted when we submitted for the new permit for the South Pit, that same ordinance with all the amendments by settlements is written the exact same way because Parish Attorney Burris requested us to provide that information. What are the settlements agreement? How are your bar pit affected? What is the changes to the ordinance based upon those agreements? So we provided that document when we did the South Pit, which is the reason we provided this document when we did the North Pit, because we knew that question would be asked. So in order to provide you with all the information that was needed, we prepared that document, which we were talking about a minute ago with the blue and the red. That same document exists for the South Pit, so that information is in the records at the permit department.
Well, we'll have to find a way to get them because we don't have them.
I'll email that to y'all also.
The depository would be Ms. Toops,
Yes.
and we do that. Now, it was the settlement agreement that was mentioned about the Idlewild pits. There's been many people comment that the pits in Narren were supposed to be filled. When I read a part of that agreement, though, it said if you rounded off the edges and gave the property to the neighbors, then that would be it. Is there intentions on backfilling the pits in Narren?
I don't know. I mean, that was a long time ago. I don't get involved with the Nairn stuff because that was Terry White owns that Nairn pit. I only get involved with the Woodland Bar pit part of it. So I don't know anything with regards to.
Is that because of your working with Ms. Phyllis Adams?
Yeah, I mean, I work for Phyllis and represent and do whatever is required with respect to Woodland Bar pits. Terry and his operations, I don't get involved with that other than as it pertains to Woodland North Bar pit.
Let's see, so yeah.
The
that would be-
agreement with the North Borough Pit.
Yeah, that was the Northborough Pit Settlement Agreement?
Yeah, they was to be able to dig it, and that's across from Arlington, right? Somewhere right around Arlington.
The North Borough pit is right across from Ironton. Yeah.
That was the agreement made when they got the original permit, that they didn't have to backfill that one if they would backfill the two in Narren. Then they came back to the council and said, we want to sell sand out of it. Well, that was denied. and nothing was ever done after that.
I'd have to pull that one up, and I'll email that to the council secretary, just so that y'all don't have to go find it. But like I said, I don't know much about that, other than I know it exists in a document. But I'll send that to the secretary.
Mr. Hogan, there's no need. I did have your email, and ladies, I just sent you that email, and I apologize, assuming that it had been sent. It was just a lot of submissions coming in. As you well know, your 2 emails got sent to my junk spam folder, so I had to go digging to find them. But anyway, those emails, the email that you sent has been sent, and the ladies will distribute it as per the committee rules.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Jacques, are you aware of any pits that are in default now and have notices, and any other litigation pending against any of the pits?
I don't have all that information. I know we have, I believe, Borough Pit litigation involving Fannie Farms. That is ongoing. As for any other defaults or issues, once again, I don't think that the enforcement arm of these ordinances were ever really put into effect. So I have no information to share with you at this time.
But there are litigations going on with all of these pit operators that are here today.
How can we get a copy of that?
So, correct me. So we giving people permits for borrow pits, and they are suing us.
I don't
That's
have
what
that.
you're saying, Benny?
Yes.
Wow. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
educate us. So the dirt and clay goes on the levee. Where does the sand go?
Well, the sand has nothing to do with the bar pits, but the sand goes on whatever projects needed. All of the sand that goes into levee projects is sand that goes into canal bottoms. A lot of times when the Corps designs that project, instead of filling up a canal with dirt that constantly settles, they'll fill the canal in with sand. And then they build a levee on top of that sand base and bring it up.
So all the sand you use is for the levees?
I'm not going to say all the sand that we use is for the levees. Some of the sand has went to some other, private entities. It's a commercial sand pit. It's not restricted to Corps projects, as is the borough pits.
Any other questions?
No, I just want to thank you for coming forward and offering all this information. It's a good education for the committee, and on our organizational day, we definitely have a plate full.
Yes.
So thank you
Like I
for
say,
coming.
I appreciate y'all letting me come and speak to y'all and helping y'all out, because we want to do whatever we need to in order to help y'all to get this, done in a timely manner. We appreciate it.
You want to help us stop the lawsuits?
Well, that's not me. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Is there any more items y'all would like to discuss at the table before we adjourn the meeting?
Motion adjourned.
We have a motion by Mr. Konovich, seconded by Mr. Valley. Machines are open. And the measure passes 6-0. We have adjournment at 10:23 a.m.